Am I the a-hole for cutting all communication with my parents, nieces, nephews, and sisters? My parents divorced when I was a kid. I'm 43, female, and the second of 4 siblings. After my dad officially left, he secretly remarried and met me at a cafe to tell me, as I'd always been his favorite. I broke the news to my mom, and while she didn't show it, I know it hurt her. From then on, my mom raised us on her own, with my dad supporting us financially. When I turned 19, my dad gave me a job at the family business, even though I didn't want it. I wasn't great at managing money, and since I lived with my mom and didn't have to pay any bills, I spent my salary on travel, luxury, and designer clothes. My older sister got pregnant young and single. My parents basically raised her daughter as their own and took all the responsibility off her. She lived at home with her daughter, and we all shared the babysitting duties. Then a few years later, my younger sister, Mona, also got pregnant while young and single. The baby's father was younger than her, unemployed and aimless. She stayed with us too, and eventually he moved in. By then, our house was packed, 7 women under one roof, and I was 22. I decided to carve out my own space, but moving out alone wasn't socially acceptable where we live, so I remodeled a room into a mini apartment. A few years later, during a work trip, I reconnected with a close friend, fell in love, and got engaged after 2 months. We married a year later, and although my parents didn't offer to help with the wedding, I paid for their flights and hotels so they could attend. Fast forward 17 years, I'm now married with 3 wonderful kids, living in a comfortable house in a nice area. My relationship with Mona was never super close, but it was good enough. She often said my friends were too snobby and that I was superficial. Anyway, a couple of years ago, during my mom's birthday party, my dad made an inappropriate comment about my 10-year-old daughter's body. My husband and I were shocked. I called Mona for advice, but she ignored me. When I brought it up with my mom, she defended Mona's decision to avoid us, saying Mona was struggling as a single mom of 2 kids by different fathers and didn't need the stress of seeing my family's success. From that point, things got worse. My family began pulling away. They stopped answering my calls, and visits to my mom's house became rare. My dad and I still had an okay relationship, but when I invited my parents to celebrate my daughter's 15th birthday, I received a text meant for my mom where my dad said, "I'll tell Jane I have COVID, so I'm not going." That broke me. I blocked my entire family after that. My parents, Mona, and my youngest sister. It hurt, especially since we threw Mona's eldest daughter a lavish 15th birthday party years ago, but my daughter didn't even get a visit from them. Am I wrong for cutting ties with them? The Bible says to honor your parents, but I feel like I don't even know mine anymore. Am I the a-hole for setting boundaries for myself? My mom and stepdad have been married almost 20 years. I used to live with them as a teenager. My stepdad has never done anything bad to me. It's always backhanded compliments or an insult under the breath. I just don't like being. Right now, I've blocked her on everything I can think of to detox from it all. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom she should stay with me postpartum instead of going to see my sister-in-law who is also due soon? So I come from a culture where it is common for the woman's mother to stay with her and assist her during the end of pregnancy, the birth, and the first few weeks after the baby is born, until she fully recovers and is able to care for the baby unassisted. My mom has always talked about wanting to do this for me. This is my first pregnancy, so while I am very nervous when I announced it, I knew my mom was looking forward to helping me through this phase as I am her only daughter. My brother and sister-in-law already have 1 child, and she found out she was pregnant with her second and was due soon after me. My sister-in-law and I have a great relationship, and when she had her first child, she chose to have it in our home country where her parents are. She had the same support from her own mother at the time, and even extra support from other relatives, including my mom. Although I live in the US, I went to visit her and help in any way I could because she felt that was important. I did too. Since then, she and my brother have moved to the US for career reasons. Me, brother, and sister-in-law are all citizens, but all of our parents live in our home country. They decided to stay in the US to have their second child. We are both due soon, and unfortunately, her parents had some visa processing issues and cannot come in time for the delivery or shortly after. My mom, however, got approved and was planning to stay with me as we had discussed before. My brother asked my mom the other day if she could come help my sister-in-law out for the delivery, as her parents could not make it, and she is expected to deliver 1 to 2 weeks after me. When she told me, I, under the assumption I would have already delivered by then, told her that I think it makes sense for her to fly out briefly for the delivery and the initial nights, but that she should come back soon after. When my sister-in-law heard this, she was upset and said that she doesn't have any family here, and my mom was the only family she had, and that she should at least be able to stay for the same 1 to 2 weeks that she is expected to help me out postpartum before my sister-in-law's due date. I countered by saying that I feel awful that her parents couldn't make it in time, and that's why I'm fine with my mother leaving for a few days to help her out, but that this is my first pregnancy, and I always thought my mom would be there in the way that we have always wanted, and that at the very least she has been around the block before. Now my mom doesn't know what to do, and I think she feels guilty. She has a good relationship with both me and sister-in-law, and doesn't want to upset anyone. I don't know if I'm being selfish here, so am I the a-hole? After reading some comments, I want to clarify a few things. Both sister-in-law and I have supportive partners who will be taking time off regardless. It is not about that. In my culture and many others, childbirth is something where the women in our community come together to help. After growing up and leaving your parents' house, this is really one of the few moments you can feel like you need your mom again and have that bonding moment. I'm sure we both would manage if we only had our partners. But it's not just about that for us. If worse comes to worse and we both have difficult deliveries that require that kind of support, then my own mother-in-law could be there for me then. In the scenario described above, where one of us do not necessarily need my mom there more than the other, I would prefer to experience this phase with my own mother. I do not have a bad relationship with my own mother-in-law, but we have a good understanding of our boundaries, and I would not feel as comfortable asking for the same things or being as vulnerable as I would be with my own mother, especially during a time where emotions are high and hormones are fluctuating. For the people saying that both I and sister-in-law are entitled or taking advantage of my mom, I want to stress that she wants to do this, not just because of culture or an expectation, but because she is very passionate about pregnancy and childcare and has always told me she has been looking forward to having that moment with me when I have a baby. Back in our home country, she has done this for countless and more distantly related women in our community and feels empowered by it. Our due dates are about 11 days apart, so I said 1 to 2 weeks to account for some buffer time. The people saying that either of us could deliver early or late are correct. As of now, we are both having healthy pregnancies and expected to deliver close to the due date, and what I told her was simply under the conditions that we do deliver 1 to 2 weeks within each other without major complications. If the situation changes, I am open to changing my perspective. Am I the a-hole for refusing to cover outrageous costs for my future sister-in-law's bridal shower? I, 23 female, am going to be a bridesmaid in my fiancé's older sister's wedding, which is set for October 2025. While I'm excited to be part of her big day, I've been a bridesmaid before and know how expensive it can be. The costs for this wedding are piling up quickly. I've already paid $300 for the bridesmaid dress, the required shoes, and $1,000 for the destination bachelorette trip. Initially, we were told there was no pressure to attend, but her mom later said it was shitty that some bridesmaids were considering skipping due to the cost, so I felt pressured to go. After we booked the trip, the maid of honor informed us that we would also be covering all of the bride's costs during the trip: food, drinks, and anything else. This was never discussed beforehand and added another unexpected expense on top of an already expensive trip. My future mother-in-law mentioned that as a bridesmaid, I'm expected to help pay for the bridal shower. She said she Googled it and found that the bridesmaids are responsible for the costs, not her as the mother of the bride. In all the weddings I've been part of, the bridal shower costs were primarily covered by family or a family friend who volunteered to host it at their home. The bridesmaids usually helped with smaller things like games and decorations. I don't mind contributing to the bridal shower, but it needs to be within reason. With everything else I've already paid for, it's becoming unmanageable, especially since I'm trying to save for my own wedding, which is planned for mid-2026. My future sister-in-law is expecting a fully catered bridal shower with elaborate decor, which feels unrealistic for a group of bridesmaids to fund. It also seems like she's picking things that aren't even within her budget and assuming others will cover the difference. Am I the asshole for wanting to set boundaries around the bridal shower costs, especially when it feels like at every turn an unexpected expense comes up without any discussion? I know weddings are expensive, as I am currently planning one, but how much is too much to ask your bridesmaids to pay? In previous weddings I was a bridesmaid in, I would spend about $1,200 total. In this case, that's not even covering the bachelorette trip. I do want to make this whole thing special for her, but it's just starting to get very costly, and I know the other bridesmaids are feeling the pressure too. We are all young and just starting our careers. Am I the a-hole for not giving my ex back a gift I received from his great-grandmother? I, 23 female, and my ex, 22 male, have been broken up for just about 3 years now. For context now, we had a child together in our relationship, and we are both currently in new relationships. His new girlfriend is pregnant with his second child. Recently, I received a message from my ex asking for a stone-carved pregnant elephant that was gifted to me by his great-grandmother 5 years back. His grandmother sadly passed a year back, and he is currently asking for it back. I asked him firstly why he wanted it back, as it was a gift for me during my pregnancy. A bit more context, we visited his family, and his grandmother had elephants everywhere in her home. I made a comment about how beautiful her collection was, as some of them were very unique. She lit up and insisted I take one as a welcome to the family present. I tried to politely tell her I would feel horrible to break up her collection, but she kept insisting. At this point, I didn't want to be rude and said okay and walked around with her as she told me stories of how she got some of the elephants. Anyways, we stumble upon the stone-carved elephant with a carved-out tummy with a baby inside. She heavily implied that my choice should be that specific elephant as it fits the situation perfectly, me being pregnant and all at the time. I smile and accepted and thanked her for letting me carry a part of her collection with me. She gave me a hug and accepted me into part of the family. My ex, who I guess got a bit jealous, wanted to pick out an elephant of his own, so he got to do so. Back to current day. He told me, due to the passing of his grandmother, he wanted to have the elephant to put with a gift he got with his great-grandfather so that they could both be together. When I asked him why he specifically wanted mine, he kept dodging the question and said it belonged to his grandmother, and it being a gift from her to me held no value. I reminded him that he got to choose his own that day. He dodged that too. calling me selfish and a lowlife. Part of me is more than willing to give it back to him, but part of me knows that he is going to gift this elephant to his new girlfriend because of her new pregnancy. I say this because I know his narcissistic and manipulative personality. Why would he ask me now and not a year ago upon her passing? Am I the a-hole? Update. I looked at the price of the elephant online. It's made from jade and have seen some sold for $200, $400 online. Money might be his key factor in getting it back. Am I the a-hole for backing up my husband who had told my stepmom to grow up or get out? This isn't on my main axis as I want genuine opinions. I, 34F, and husband, 37M, and stepmom, 52F. My stepmom has been helping us out by babysitting my 2 children, 2 and 5, and while me and my husband are very grateful, we are very upset with her. My stepmom recently was divorced by my father. My stepmom had nowhere to go, so she had asked to stay with us. I hadn't had a great relationship with her for stealing stuff I had bought with my money when I was 17. However, I decided to push past this and move on. When she moved in, we went over rules and told her what her experience would look like. She agreed to our rules, which included buying food for herself when necessary, although we did tell her we would mostly be buying stuff for her so she could get back on her feet. Another rule we had was babysitting. We would agree to pay her for babysitting our kids when we needed her so that she could make some money to get back on her feet. We gave her our job contact info had she ever needed to call them if she couldn't get a hold of us while we were at work. Recently, we haven't really been needing her to babysit, but she has been insistent on paying for food items. We went over the fact that this wasn't needed, and she replied that she wanted to feel like she had more power over us by paying for food. I gently reminded her that this was our house and she was a guest in it, to which she got pissed. She told me and my husband that she has power over us and how she was my mom. I didn't reply and just stopped talking to her. My husband had made plans with her that we would need her to babysit our kids this past Monday, and she had agreed to it since we were both going to work. I am at work when my work receives a call from my husband telling me that my stepmom called him saying that she was leaving to go party with her friends and he was going back home to talk to her. I agree that he is doing the reasonable thing since she has no concept of responsibility. I then, while at work, receive a call from my stepmom who had said that my husband said that she needed to grow up and gain responsibility or get out. I, of course, sided with my husband and she hung up. The next morning, whilst driving home, I noticed my stepmom's car wasn't in my driveway, and I asked my husband about it, to which he replied, she chose to get out. I have been trying to reach my stepmom for days, but she nor my stepsister, whom she moved in with, will hold a conversation with me, and my stepmom will not apologize. I'm starting to feel like the a-hole since neither of them will respond to me. Did I overreact and overstep for basically kicking her out?